obviously every brand in this space talks about it, but environment is a huge challenge. All of the global politicians are now talking about it, but we feel that talking is just not enough these days, and we want to be there to provide viable alternatives. But there is also another challenge that we believe is worth addressing, which is just a humanitarian challenge of seeing how many people there are in the world and how many people are being born. And there is no way to reliably secure nutritious food for all of them with the current technology. So we believe that development of new technologies on how we think about food, how we produce food that is not only sustainable but highly nutritious is something worth bringing to market. And so when we are developing products, we are really trying to make sure that our products are nutritiously superior than their meat counterparts, because this is something that's not talked about as much as the environmental aspect, but we believe is just as important.
Yeah. So I suppose that there are two sides to this food system security bit. One is that soon there's going to be 10 billion people in the world, and is there enough food to support all of them? And then climate change is itself starting to be seen as kind of like a national security concern, and perhaps for one of these reasons, as well as rising tides, even in places where there is food security, it's going to be difficult to feed everybody. But also food itself, the act of producing food, particularly beef, is one of the big contributors, isn't it? So is that part of your goal to kind of displace things like beef?
Yeah, I mean, especially high-intensity beef farming, because my perception personally, this is not necessarily the position of everyone within the company, but I believe that meat is not something that we're going to uproot within the next 5 years. But I would very much love to see, if people do eat meat, that they source it from, their local small farmers, just supporting local economy. But most of the time try to find sustainable alternatives like what we are trying to offer and what other companies are trying to offer. So removing that part of meat agriculture out of the system, the intensive farming in, huge facilities in horrible conditions, should be the first challenge. And there should be a distinction between meat. Not all meat is created equally. Still, I think it's important to try and remove as much meat from the system as possible. But I think that this is going to be a long and laborious process, and it's important on how we think about it.
Yeah. I think one thing that blew my mind when I started researching the causes of climate change is just what a big contributor agriculture is. I mean, agriculture to the uninformed layman seems like the most natural thing in the world, doesn't it? But it's actually a huge contributor. So what is it about meat farming in particular, or specifically the types of meat farming that you're talking about that makes it such a large contributor to climate change?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. If you're just looking at GHG emissions, most of it, or a lot of it, comes from agriculture, and the huge part, or the biggest part, actually comes from beef production, or beef raising. They produce a lot of methane, which is a highly degrading gas, which is not ideal. But also, as you look at the other aspects of just how much land is being used to raise cattle in comparison to how much land is used for where people live. And then if you do a bit of napkin math, you can see that the amount of feed that goes towards that, and then the amount of water, it just gets to a level where you've got to think to yourself, why are we using that much arable land where you could be producing crops that are just as nutritious, maybe not historically as consumed, but with the use of today's technology, we can make them as tasty as beef or better. And then it just starts to fall apart. Because, look, if you have highland cattle who's grazing about because you couldn't possibly grow soy there, I think that's different than using the best land you have available where you could be growing anything, just like a permaculture of different plant species, but you're using it all just to raise this monoculture of beef. I think that causes a lot of degradation.